probably was about 2 months ago. One of the experiences where between me and my son, the older son Nathan, made me realize how important trust is in feedback conversation and in any conversation for that matter, and that each conversation either adds to the shared pool of trust or can detract from it. And so me and Nathan, we are roughly the same height and we the same build. And so we like to share each other clothes, while mainly Nathan wears my clothes. And so if I reminded him that he has my t-shirt, he then leans forward, it's like, it's our t-shirt. And fair enough. And so at one point, it was my turn to borrow his jacket because my winter one was in the washing machine. And so I needed to go to the shop. I put it on, I left my house, and on the street, I realized there is something heavy on my chest, an object. And so I unzipped the pocket, and in that pocket, there was a lighter. Now, if you are a parent, you know exactly what was happening in my head. And if you're not, you can certainly imagine the thoughts that I had. And so there was a need for conversation to have with Nathan. Now, as a parent, as a person with formal authority, if you will, as a person who has just been emotionally hijacked, when the emotions run strong, I could handle this conversation in a number of different ways. And most likely 3 to 4 years ago, I could use one of those examples that I'm going to share with you right now, but I haven't done it. Instead, I choose to only ask him one question with 4 words. What I could have done is to storm into his room and ask him, what's this lighter doing in your pocket? Or I could ask him, can you explain why you're having a lighter? Or I could go more directly and I could say, hey, Nathan, are you smoking? But I've done none of it because I realized that conversation would start really badly and I would detract the trust that we are sharing. So instead, I walked to his room with this lighter in my hand, and I asked him, Nathan, should I be worried? And that's all I did. Just one question that allowed us to have a safe conversation that was marked with a conversation that was really comfortable for both of us. I didn't put him on the back foot right from the beginning. I got all the answers that I needed to have. And what's more important, I have added to the shared pool of trust between me and him, which then makes each conversation in the future easier. Now, should I use my formal authority, then each conversation in the future would be a lot more difficult for both of us. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of this conversation, I walked back into my room and I went through all the process that I would just, all this conversation that we just had. And I realized that building trust with each conversation is really important. And so what I decided to do actually is to keep that lighter. I asked Nathan if I can keep that lighter now, because it serves me as a reminder how important trust is when it comes to feedback conversations. And I take this lighter with me to every single workshop or public speaking engagement that I have. And I share that story and I show people that the actual lighter itself.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, as I mentioned before, when you first told me that story, I loved it. I loved the attitude of trust and taking someone at their word. And that obviously they're at he's at an age where, you can choose to trust his answer and build rapport around that or build trust around that. Certainly in having a team member, you're giving them an opportunity, maybe if they are failing, to privately or quietly make a choice to step up and do the right thing, or to simply affirm that, yeah, everything's fine. No, it's a good story. Good one. Thanks.
Thank you. It's what's incredible is, for me personally, probably 2-3 years ago, I would just have that conversation, even if I handle it in the same way, that would be just a conversation that would probably never thought about again, unless there is another worrying moment in my life when I think maybe actually he does smoke the cigarettes. Mm-hmm. But instead, now it's a story. Mm-hmm. Because when you start thinking and looking and searching around what's happening, you see life is full of stories that you can hold with yourself, share with people. And I'll be very honest with you, that stories helps me tremendously to connect with people during my workshops. And I always use it right at the start, almost. For the first 10 minutes, that's the story that I'm sharing with people.
Nice.
It has tremendous impact. People genuinely sharing the feedback with me that story was incredible and they want to know more about it.
No, that's brilliant. It's perfect. So what was it in your mind that because there was a point where you weren't using stories as much, and now they're cornerstones. I remember you telling me at one point you now try to construct your talks around telling stories and then having a couple of messages, but
Yes.
for every point you now build a story. So you've started looking at your experiences and your memories and moments and your connections with people differently, because now you're looking for these stories. What was it that changed for you?
I think it's a build-up of a few things. I need to start from to share with you guys that my role model is Simon Sinek, and he's my storyteller role model. If you
Yes,
haven't heard him yet, you just go to Google his talks. You will see what I mean by that. And his talk, Leaders Eat Last,
I love
the
that one.
way he shares the story about leadership is tremendous. I remember it watching on the YouTube, and I was like that. And then you read the book, and it's the same story. He opens the book with the story. The best story, the best book opening that I have ever read in any books, I promise you. And so I was like, wow, this is amazing. And he just doesn't do that once. He does it through the entire book, whether it starts with why, whether it is Leaders It Last, or the latest book of his, which is The Infinite Games.
Infinite Game, yeah.
Right? He leads with the stories and he connects with you.
Mhm.
But what's important for me is that he explains his concept in such a simple and easy way that you understand. And you understand it because he's using story. Now, Simon Sinek's approach is mainly home stories with families, which is very easy for everyone to connect. And so I thought, wow, this is very good. But I never thought I could do that, because my first thought was like, I don't have stories like he has. Where does he have them? Like, how does he create them? Does he have like content creators for it? Like, is there a copywriter or something?
Yeah.
So I abandoned the idea of creating stories.
Mhm.
And when I started developing my own business and developing my own training program, one of my promises, one of my pledges is that I have to simplify it so people can contextualize everything. One of the biggest frustrations that I have with workshops and trainings that I've attended in the past is that it's all very complex.
Mhm.
Yes, people do use some analogies, they use some acronyms, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult to contextualize. When you go back to your workplace, it's like, how do I do that again?
Mhm.
And so I realized that if I start developing the skills of not creating, but actually writing my own stories, storing them on my laptop, and start connecting them with my learning points, start using analogies and creating my own analogies, then eventually I know I will be able to do that.
Mhm.
And so I've spent my last year and a half learning how to do it. And I've decided that 2020 is my year when I double down on storytelling skills. So
Mhm.
my personal development for this year is a storytelling,
Love it.
period.
Love it. You know, what's also very cool about that is, in your case, you know, with your feedback coaching, you're doing something like a unique service. But for a lot of us, we are specialists in a service that a lot of other people are also doing. But the one thing that we certainly can bring, that we can own, that is unique, apart from ourselves and our attitude and experiences, but the stories that we tell are going to be unique. And when people remember those stories, nobody else can tell them the way that you tell them.
Yes.
So those are unique conversation elements, you know, or discussion points to bring, that can just, they're one of the most incredible and valuable pieces in your, yeah, in your marketing stack.
Absolutely. Think about, you have to differentiate yourself somehow, and you have to be memorable.
Mhm.
If you start telling stories, people will trust you, people will lean towards you, and they will
Mhm.
connect with you.
Mhm.
And then that's how you become a memorable person. And if there is time when they do need a certain service, you are
Mhm.
there because you have connected with them already. It's very difficult to forget somebody who told you incredible story that you resonate with.
Mhm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a business story related to your to whatever you do. Now,
Mhm.
right now, I'm developing stories that are actually connected with my learning points.
Mhm.
But my second public speaker and storyteller role model is Vin Yang, and he tells the story that aren't completely not related to what it is that he's doing, even
Mhm.
to the point when he walks into the business meeting and meets with the prospects, he shares personal stories in order to be memorable, in order to connect.
Mhm.
And that's how he's actually closing the deals just by telling the stories that's completely irrelevant to the service that he's providing almost right then and there. So, because that's how we connect. We are wired to connect with stories and resonate with them.
Love it. Thanks, Raf. If you were to start let's say a storytelling consultancy, because you got it right in such an amazing way. So let's say that was one business idea. Another one, you have this phenomenal restaurant experience. So maybe a restaurant consultancy, right? So let's say out of those, maybe those two ideas. Let's say that it's for small businesses or maybe small restaurants. And let's say there's the constraints are 6 to 9 months, to see if it's viable to make it work. But you can't advertise, you don't have an advertising budget. So how then would you get off the ground? Like, what would you start doing? Or first, let's pick one. Which one sort of appeals to you right at the moment?
I think both are really good, if I'm honest with you. The restaurant is something that I could do from the experience, but if you take me to the zone of let's start the storytelling business, then you are working through the examples and taking somebody to the area which is alien to me almost. So which I believe then makes it more tangible and relatable to whatever you're trying to achieve, because people don't believe they have stories and how to utilize them. Whilst we could have a conversation around something that is like, well, I never even thought about it. It's the first time you've offered me. So let's just, we'll just go with the flow and see where we can take it. Whilst with the restaurant, I could start using it. People would sense that I have a background. And so I could actually do it, because maybe even at some point I was considering one or the other. And on the back of it, actually, people can see if I'm from my Instagram and stuff that actually do work with restaurants. So it's no longer that sort of unexpected ad hoc conversation. Sort of let's work through the idea. So I think the business storytelling is more like spontaneous and kind of like, wow, okay, never thought about it, but let's see what we can do. What would I do differently?
I'm actually really interested to go both ways with you, just to see where you take it. But let's start with the restaurant, or let's do the restaurant one. I'm interested. Let's say it's a consultant. So I love watching these restaurant makeover TV shows. So let's say it's something like that, but it's about creating not just streamlining business and so on, but it's about improving the human experience. Because every restaurant wants people to be Instagramming everything and leaving good reviews and so on. So let's say you decide tomorrow you're going to start a consultancy for that. What would the first thing that you would do to get something like that going?
What? Okay, would you like to answer me from which sort of angle and go, like from what sort of process you like me to walk through, as in related to the stories, or to with the marketing? How do I start market it, or how would I? I'm not entirely sure.
So not so much the stories. It's now about, if you were to build this business, what I'd like to understand is, how would you break down, what would your process be for getting a business off the ground, for starting something, a restaurant consultancy, to go in maybe where you would provide an analysis and help them then work through, and then provide coaching to make them a better restaurant, that kind of thing.
My process, okay. Where would I start? Certainly, I would first create my own program and service around what I've been through myself. What's really important to me, that whatever I do, the conversation that I have, if I coach people, even as a manager, as a leader in the past, I would never introduce people to the concept or idea or try something that I've seen work for others or read it in the book. If I haven't tried it myself, I wouldn't do it. So for me, it's about understanding what it is that I can really do, and I've been through it. So when I coach people and I help them, they can sense that I'm one of them, that we resonate, that we are alike, because we've shared the same pain. I've been through it, I've done it, and now it's my turn to help you. Versus having sort of quotes and concepts that, I've read 100 books, never tried, but I know it works because I've seen on the YouTubes, I've been on the courses, etc., etc. So what I would start myself, if I was today open a restaurant consultancy, is to look through the process that in my journey as a manager, from team member all the way to leading the restaurants, what I have done in the past, what were the pain points, and where I can really help with.
Mhm.
And so it would be a lot more around transitioning team members into managers, something that I truly am passionate and experienced, and I really loved doing so. In terms of business, how to advertise your business, that wouldn't be part of my consultancy, because this is not something that I've done in the past. I've done a little bit, somehow with a little success. So I wouldn't like to pretend that I'm an expert and quickly study the concepts. So it has to be something that I've been through. I've rolled my sleeves, I've done it, it works. Here's how I've done it. And something. So that would be the starting point for me.
Nice. So develop a program. And I can't remember the name of the company, but they were like, don't just sell a service, name it. It's I don't know, the restaurant X Factor program, right? Or the RAF makeover bundle or something. When you
Yeah.
name something, all of a sudden it feels far more official, feels something outside of you. It's not just let me tap
Yes.
into something RAF knows. It's like, no, it's a program. It's got a name.
Yeah.
I thought that was very helpful. I went and did that for all of my services as well. And you
I think you're right. I think I remember with myself when I actually came up with my own idea and actually added a name and registered the company name. It felt tangible and real. But one thing I can tell you, it would definitely wouldn't be called Raf's Makeover or Raf's something. I don't like the idea of having my own name attached, as in like it is sort of mine. For me, for some reason, I see it as me putting myself on the pedestal and being like, look at me, it's all mine.
yeah.
I don't like that. So
Maybe if
definitely it
you were
would be
like
anything.
already a recognized celebrity and everybody was like, oh, you're Gordon Ramsay. It's like, if the
Yeah,
Ramsay makeover, okay, that makes sense. But when you're starting from, from nothing and you're just getting going, then you don't have that credibility yet. So yeah, no, that makes sense. So cool. First step then would be to create that program or create that package. What would you do next?
knowing myself, and there is a pros and cons to it. I would hone it, practice it, rewrite it again and again and again. And there is a value to it, but there's also risk that I would procrastinate with it and
Mhm.
wouldn't start actually reaching out to people, because in my mind, it's not ready. It's not polished. It's not final. It's
Mhm.
not ready yet to be released. I need to do it a little bit better. And so I would more likely spend quite a lot of time trying to polishing the details rather than actually have the concept, understanding what I do, because this is something that I've been through, and start reaching out to people and build as you go. So more likely, if that would be 2 years ago, that's what I would do. But with my experience today, I know you have to understand that there is no such thing as polished program, as finished, and then you go and sell it.
Mhm.
You learn as you go. Even if you think it's a perfect version, you deliver a few workshops and you understand that actually, you know what, I can improve it. So understanding it today would help me to create a framework, be confident about it, and then start reaching out to people and helping them with what I have and develop as I go.
Perfect. Let me break that down a little bit. For how would you reach out? What would be your way to start networking, to start reaching other people, letting them know about your program, um, whether it's a long term or it's sort of a short term conversation? How would you start doing that?
My ways is social media and creating video content. So that's how I spread my message and make myself known, um,
I like it.
with people around. That's how I choose to approach
Hmm.
whatever I do. I'm not a typical networking person. I'm not really good with it. I can see the value with it,
Hmm.
but this is not what I feel actually comfortable with. So I would love to say, hey, go
How
and
would
network.
how would you define networking? Because it's interesting. Different people think about it differently. How would you explain networking?
I think when I think networking, I think about those meetings when they are organized by a certain person, and when all different business people would walk in
Like a
and
trade
starting to get to know
show?
each other and
Yeah.
introducing to each other. That's how I view networking events, and this is not what I feel comfortable with.
Hmm.
If I'm honest with you, what I feel comfortable with, and actually through my experience, is going to the events that are not necessarily networking one. So
Hmm.
through the social media, through the internet, I found few different like-minded groups, and then there are certain events with people attending, and that's what I feel comfortable with. And it's very comfortable. It's easier to have those organic conversation with people rather than just going to the meeting with idea of
Yeah.
selling yourself, if you will.
And knowing that everybody else is there trying to do the same thing.
Exactly. So find a community on online. Find a community. Stay around with them. Start engaging with them online, and you will find a space for yourself. You will find a place when you feel like you belong, and you can start bringing value to those people, and people will recognize you. They will remember about you, and then you have a better chance for people to either invite you or pass your name forward.
Mm-hmm.
That at least worked for me, but that's
Yes.
that works for me.
No, that makes sense. So what would you do? Would you go on Facebook and look up um, groups around restaurant members, or would you, I don't know, go after restaurant uh, coaches, or how would you start finding, or where would you start looking to find the group where you could start providing value and not pitching, but being helpful and getting your name known to the right audience? How would you find them?
I would go to LinkedIn. I would go LinkedIn, and that's where there are tons. There is huge possibilities. LinkedIn has huge possibilities, and there are different type of groups, different type of people when they engage in sharing different type of content. You can join the groups as well. They're not as active on LinkedIn as they are on Facebook. But I would start with LinkedIn personally. That's when you can really find like-minded people. You can find a lot of content that being shared with that angle that you are expert as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can start commenting on that content. You can make yourself known just by actually engaging with all those people content. Whilst on Facebook, I found it very difficult. I didn't find the same reach and content that I could engage with comfortably
Mm-hmm.
without thinking, I need to do it to sell myself. On LinkedIn is a lot more organic and natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
You can find like-minded people or people that actually do operate within hospitality industry, within restaurant industry, and start engaging with their content. And then from there, you get to know people, and the conversation will follow.
Nice. So that sounds like a valuable, little longer term method, and a couple of months of doing that, and slowly building conversations. But would you also try to make connections with local restaurants, or within the surrounding counties?
I think there is value into it, but in all honesty, I'm not really good with doing so. This is my own personal body. This is something that I don't feel comfortable
And that's
going
fine, but
there.
I'm actually, that's what I'm looking for. Is I'm curious, because for some people they'd be like, oh, I print up business cards and a flyer, and I would walk into every single restaurant and I'd say, hi, I'm local, here's what I do you want to have a conversation? But I'm curious, what would you do? How would you approach it? Because there are tons of people who aren't comfortable doing that, and I think I'm
Yeah.
one of them.
Um,
Curious where you would go. So you would start with online, have that slower burn, focus on building
yes.
value.
This is how I operate. What feels comfortable with me. I would not be able. I don't feel comfortable walking to the business and start selling myself. It just, for some reason, this is huge barrier for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally fan of a very slow approach
Mm-hmm.
and getting to people to know me, what I do, and who I am
Mm-hmm.
through providing value consistently
Yeah.
on online. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or then going into and have a speaking engagement, and people can actually have a real sense of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
what my approach is. Now, walking in from the business to business definitely has a value, and people do get a business from it. I'm not saying don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm saying is I am completely not comfortable with it,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore I don't think I would have done it. I haven't done it with my current business, nor I would do it
Mm-hmm.
with the restaurant wise.
Yeah.
Now, that said, what is possible if it is within the restaurant? So if I was to open a restaurant industry, dining elsewhere allows you to be there, and then you can start providing value from there as well. You can connect with people from there. When you are a guest at the restaurant, you can start having a conversations and start having influence or positive impact on
Mm-hmm.
different businesses that way. So
Yeah.
if we're talking about the restaurant itself,
Mm-hmm.
yes, because I could do it and it would feel for me organically, naturally. You're there, you sit, you're dining, and then you see opportunity, you can help without with no agenda of me selling myself, is walking in, hey, this is what I do, that
Mhm.
sort of thing. So that would more likely work for me if it is hospitality industry in restaurants.
Mhm.
But if it's like offices and knocking on the door, and no, that would not work for me.
Makes sense. Well, so good. So your process then would be to one, come up with a program, and then start looking for the right kinds of people. Primarily for you is on LinkedIn,
Yes,
um, and then find groups. Try to find the people, find the groups that they're in, join those, and then start providing value, creating personal connections, and networking that way. And then
yes.
over time, providing that value and creating that relationship so that selling the package just becomes a natural part of the discussion as opposed to a
Absolutely.
pitch.
Absolutely. So you start online. My advice: start LinkedIn. You sharing the value, connecting with people over there. They getting to know you, who you are, and what you are capable of.
Mhm.
And then at some point there are different meetings, whether it's LinkedIn local or certain events that then you can attend because those people are there as well. You
Mhm.
get to meet them in the real life, a person to, eye to eye,
Yeah.
have a real conversation, and from then they really resonate with you, if they resonate with you, and then it's easier to be referred to somewhere else, or being told, hey, there is, that person needs a help, or there's another event, they might need a speaker, and that gives you opportunity to be in front of the people that you feel comfortable with at the same time. At least it worked for me.
Mhm.
So then the opportunity will start coming up. It is the slow approach, it is the longer approach, absolutely,
Mhm.
but you being perceived as a sincere person that is there to help and support, and we do resonate with it. So
Mhm.
that's my approach and my advice to people.
Ralph, I love it. No, it's great. Thank you. So cool. That was that segment. Well done.
Superb.
Um, cool. So last one, and I'll let you go. Last section is if you were to go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, and you talked about maybe self-awareness. So what might you say to yourself, and then why? Like, why has that become important to you? How do you think about that today in a way that you didn't back then?
If there is one piece of advice that I would give myself, my younger self,
Mhm.
it would be to start looking into self-awareness, especially emotional self-awareness. This
Yeah.
is something that I have been completely neglecting through my childhood, and when I was a teenager, when I was in my early 20s, even early 30s. This was not something that I was aware of and practicing,
You were
which
also
led me
in
to.
professional wrestling and all of that, and I imagine there's not a lot of emotional awareness discussion happening on the mats and in that whole
No,
culture.
it's so. You see, it's funny because the question, if asked me what I would, the advice that I would give myself when I could go back in time.
Mhm.
Now, if not for the wrestling, then today I would probably say go back in time and introduce yourself to growth mindset.
Mhm.
Now, I don't have to do that because I've discovered that concept, the growth mindset, when I was 16 years old. Completely coincidentally, the book didn't even exist just yet.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Carol Dweck was just working on that concept. It was, in his infancy, if you will.
Mhm.
But I've discovered when I was 16, and it helped me tremendously. And I can keep on going. I can keep on facing challenges, whether it's personal life, business, whatever that is, thanks to growth mindset. And that's what I discovered as a wrestler. But when it comes to self-awareness, especially emotional one, new sport did not teach me that whatsoever. My parents did not told me that whatsoever. At school, there are no conversation around emotional self-awareness,
Mhm.
and that can lead you into a very dark place. And I have crushed and burned at some point.
Wow.
My coping mechanism would actually completely neglect emotional self-awareness. It would be to forget. It would be to locked up all the negative experiences and keep on going, right?
Mhm.
March on, soldier on, and keep on going. And I can still do that if I wanted to, but there is a price attached to it because
Mhm.
you're closing yourself away from different emotional experiences in your life. And this is not who I want to be as a person, as a
Mhm.
husband, and as a parent. More importantly, as a husband, as a parent, I don't want to close up myself off away from certain emotional experiences.
Mhm.
And so early 30s, I have discovered emotional self-awareness thanks to my mentor. And then I have read incredible book called Insights,
Mhm.
and my life has changed tremendously from that point onwards.
Mhm.
And so the advice would be look into emotional self-awareness and start practicing it. Be mindful.
How would you describe what emotional self-awareness is? And you've probably touched on it, but I just want to get like a uh, in like one phrase, like how would you describe that? Is it just being? Go ahead. Go ahead.
For me,
Mm-hmm.
it's, are you actually aware how you feel at certain points, at certain times, and what you are thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the thinking part is not necessarily as attached to emotional self-awareness. Now, I'm not the emotional intelligence coach. I'm not the EQ coach. But I can walk you through my own process. And so I've realized that I am not aware how I feel at certain points. I don't even think about it
Mm-hmm.
and allow my thoughts to just go whatever they want to. Okay. And because we tend to be negative,
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to assume things are negative, we just following those paths and we have no idea how they're actually influencing our emotional well-being, how our thoughts makes us feel at each part of the day, and where does it lead, whether it's before the conversation with someone or afterwards. How do you feel during tense conversation? Because we are completely oblivious without practicing. Now, few people might be natural with it and they're pretty good at it. I wasn't. I would not be able to tell you how I felt during tense conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I just wouldn't know at what point I was triggered, what caused it, and how long I stayed in that state
Mm-hmm.
moving forward. And so actually being aware about how you feel at a particular time is really important. And what you're thinking is really important, because then you start realizing and learning that my thoughts have real impact how I feel
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, how stressed I am, how anxious I am throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not something that we want. But I promise you, once you start following certain patterns, you will see that you are creating a lot of stress for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are two types of drivers that are approaching traffic lights.
Mm-hmm.
One would be annoyed and anxious about stopping at the red light, and there's a certain conversation in his head that makes him feel agitated, anxious, stressed. And there's another type of driver that will just drive in, red light, wait for his turn, and carry on. Now imagine if you're driving 100 miles a day and you're stopping on 25 different crossroads, traffic lights, right? At the end of the day, those two drivers would feel completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm driving home from working those 100 miles and I get nervous and I get annoyed that there is a red light and it's not green, then I would walk home in emotional state that would not help me enjoy the best possible time that I want to have with my family, with the people that I love.
Mm-hmm.
We're not necessarily aware why that is. We would put it on, my boss is bad,
Mm-hmm.
my life is hard.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that might be the truth, but how you translate things that are happening to you and around you makes the difference. But we're not aware of it. How much time we spend thinking, damn, it's a red light again. Why it's always happening to me, right? So start being conscious about your thoughts, because those thoughts create how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I would describe as emotional self-awareness, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.